Welcome back to Pass the Torch, Legacies in Jewelry. My name is Naja Dasa Van Diest, and today we have Mr. Jeff Park on the podcast, the one and only. He's so fun. He really is known for doing these incredible, like, Disney motifs and playful characters, and he's just a phenomenal hand engraver. He's faceting some of his own stones to incorporate into his hand engraved pieces, and they match up with an image. I think he, carved out a skull into a stone and then hand engraved, the rest of the body on the back plate and put them together to create the final image. What a cool concept. What a cool guy. It was a joy to have you on, Jeff. You're welcome on this podcast anytime. I really had a great time talking to you. And if you are listening, please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you would feel so inclined. It really helps me just keep this small little passion project of mine afloat. And so, without further ado, here's our conversation.
Jeff Park, thank you so much for joining today. It's a pleasure to have you on. You have described a lifelong passion for just art in general. That's drawing, writing, music, all of those things. How do you feel those early creative outlets have influenced your engraving work today?
Well, like my door says, if you were to look at my door, it has J Park on my door and it says established in 1977. That's the year I was born, and that's how I look at my career, where I feel like everything that I've experienced or done or seen or heard has led up to the person I am now. And so I think that from an early age, I think music obviously was and still is really. I feel like musical is the most powerful art. It is to me. I think it can, move most people to like feel super deep. And I know paintings can do that, different types of art can do that, performing arts, don't get me wrong, but I think overall music is probably my biggest love. It always has been, and it's driven me ever since I was just like a little kid. When I actually tell people now, if they ask me what I do, sometimes I say a lot of different things because I just avoid saying like a jeweler or engraver. I think I don't know why those things like bug me, but I'll just say, like, I'm a failed musician. It's like, when I was a kid, I just wanted to play the guitar, and then I eventually started playing music with my brother and then writing songs and then joining bands. And that's even into college, I was playing music. That's what I wanted to do. And so with jewelry, I kind of got sidetracked. So I think that everything, kind of has its place in like, inspiring you to what you do at some given point. And I think, I think with jewelry, when I started jewelry, it was in 2005, I believe, is when I got into it. But I feel like everything that I did since I was a little kid kind of prepared me to where I am now. And even when I come into my studio now, I feel like I'm still a little kid. I do the same things that I did when I was young, like drawing and all these things that I just now people are paying me for it. But I find it to be very, very similar as to what I did as a kid.
Oh, that's so fun. How did you even end up at the bench from, being in arts and multiple different facets, but somehow you ended up, stuck at a jeweler's bench. How did that happen?
I think my whole career is fortuitous, meaning I think the stars aligned. I don't know because sometimes I think about it and I was like, how did I get from where I was to where I am now? So I think it was the mid 80s, my dad was looking to buy my mom a new diamond, upgrade her diamond. And so he started doing his research, and my dad is someone that never wants to pay retail for anything. And so he ended up finding a company called, I think it was West African Mines out of Salt Lake City. We were in southern Utah at the time. And he was able to work out a wholesale deal where if he bought 8 stones at once, he could get them for wholesale from this company. And so he found, I think, 6 or 7 of his friends to go in and buy stones at cost. And then through that, he ended up getting himself into the diamond business. And he started selling loose stones on the side. That eventually led to him getting into bridal. That led to 2 of my older brothers actually opening up jewelry stores of their own. So I had one brother that opened up a jewelry store in Salt Lake and another one that opened up a jewelry store in St. George, southern Utah, that's where I'm from. And so I was going to college at the time. This was, I don't know, 2004, 2000, I can't even remember the date. But he needed a bench jeweler, so he asked me if I wanted to come in and try my hand at bench work. So it's just random, it's kind of this. I never thought about jewelry, never had any, none of that had ever crossed my mind. I didn't take like a jewelry class in high school or college or anything like that. It was my brother had a store and he asked me if I wanted to come in and try my hand at bench work. And so from there, it just, I remember I apprenticed under an old school jeweler. He was actually from Denver. His name was Greg Ortega. He had GO written all over all of his tools. So go, don't touch the go tools. It had his initials on all of his tools. He was just, kind of a traditional jeweler who did wax carving, diamond setting, repair work, a kind of jack of all trades jeweler. And I just started apprenticing under him, just, you know, getting some scrap silver, throwing it, melting it down, pouring out ingots, rolling it out, making wire, just level one fabrication. And then from there, it was basically just, uh, you know, slowly getting into repair work, sizing rings, all the stuff that goes on in a repair shop. And I apprenticed with him for about 4 months, and then all of a sudden he just bounced. He went back to Denver, and I was just left by myself in this, you know, jewelry shop. And so I had to figure out a lot of the things in the beginning on my own. But at the same time, I also wanted to upgrade my skill set. And so my brother he's like, oh, you ever heard of this, school, the New Approach School for Jewelers? It's like, no, I've never heard of him. He said he was willing to send me out to get training at New Approach. And so New Approach at the time was out in Virginia Beach. So I went out to New Approach. I took all of Blaine's classes. I took his diamond setting, advanced diamond setting. I took wax carving from Kate Wolf, basically all of his classes that he'd offered. And the last class I took was in 2008, August of 2008, and it was Jason's ornamental hand push engraving course. And I remember I sat right next to Blaine because Blaine took the class with us. Do you know Blaine by chance? Are you familiar? Blaine owns the school. I tend to,
Everyone tells me I need to meet Blaine. I don't know Blaine, obviously. I've met Jason.
yeah. He yeah,
I've only heard great things.
he's the best. He's the best. Anyway, so I sat next to Blaine, and during that class, something in my brain just clicked. Like all of a sudden, all of my drive and desire up until that point was put into like music and wanting to create, through either playing the piano or guitar or something like that. And then all of a sudden it just shifted. Like it was almost like something in my brain broke or came open, just opened up. And I became obsessed with engraving. I just went home. It's all I did. I went home from that class. I just had the hand tools. I didn't have any of like, the air tools. I didn't have a microscope. And I just started cutting everything. Just started rolling out silver blanks, making rings, engraving rings. Just couldn't consume enough material. And I got to a point where I needed to like get the tools. I needed the, air assist tools. I needed the GRS tools. And so I had one item that had value, and that was my Paul Reed Smith custom 22 guitar, and I sold it. I sold it for $1,500, and that allowed me to buy my GRS Graver Max. And then through there, shortly after that, I think maybe within a month, I was able to get a microscope. Once I had those two items, it was just like, I was in the Millennium Falcon and it was light speed. It was like
Yeah.
I progressed really, really fast, but I didn't progress fast because I was more talented or better or whatever than anybody else. It's just because it's all I did. It just really, I engraved when I was at work, and then I engraved when I got home, and then I engraved on the weekends, and I engraved every single day, anytime I could. And it was probably shortly after that, maybe 6 months after I took Jason's class, that we actually reconnected on one of the forums, and he saw what I was doing, and he was just like, whoa, He's like, what's going on with you? I think that Jason saw in me, like, the drive, like, because I think he had the
Yeah,
same thing. He saw in me probably the same things he saw in himself. It was like, okay, this kid's serious. And so he started inviting me to come out and staying with him. He was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at the time, building these crazy one-off these like $500,000 pieces of jewelry.
right.
And I'd go and stay and sleep on a blow-up mattress in his living room. And I would go out there. I think that, one time I spent like almost a month out there, but I went out there several times, and he'd just show me. He's like, what do you want to learn? I said, oh, let's do the Bellino. Okay. Or the banknote, or, whatever it was. And so he'd just show me whatever I wanted to learn, which I think back on and I'm like, I highly doubt anybody's had that kind of privilege and experience to be able to do something like that. Because the thing is, I recognized who Jason was and the opportunity, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm on a plane. Let's go. Let's do this. And so I would say probably 9 out of 10 things that I know, Jason taught me those things. I'm still using all the same techniques that he showed me, when was that, 18 years ago, 17 years ago?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question was like, who has mentored you and what kind of impact has that had on you?
Yeah, and so I think that 90% of it's going to come from Jason. Jason is the one who sat down with me, just person to person, and showed me the correct way how to do things, whether it was like Bellino dots or gold inlay or banknote, the correct way to do banknote engraving, all of these traditional techniques that he just, so I feel like he was the most important mentor by far, by far. And then there's, Sam Alfano, great instructor, and I'm thankful I still watch Sam's videos. Like, I can go back and watch his sculpting video just over and over again. His tutorials that he had on iGraver were super helpful. He's got a whole, I think there's like 20 different tutorials on his iGraver.com. I did all those multiple times. I do remember when I went out and studied with Elaine Lovenberg. I learned from Elaine that I don't know anything. it's like it's like a humbling experience. Like I'm an amateur. Same thing from Alexander Sidorov. I learned that, okay, I don't know how to set stones. I thought I did, but I don't, apparently. But I would say for the most part, most of my, especially in the beginning, it came from Jason. Those first 3 or 4 years of what I was doing, Jason influenced me the most. There's been several people that have had influences on me after that. And then it's just been a lot of just figuring stuff out for yourself. I mean, nothing beats just time at the bench. I try to teach my students that it's just, you have to do it. It's like, I feel like you usually can self-correct. If you're making mistakes and doing things wrong, just keep doing it and you'll self-correct.
I love
Maybe not
that.
always, but I feel like that nothing beats just, if you don't know how to do something, just try it. I'm
Put in
good
the
at just,
hours.
yeah, I'm good at, I don't know how to do a lot of stuff. I don't claim to know how to do everything. It's just, but if I want to do something, I'm just very determined to like figure it out. And a lot of stuff is just figuring it out.
Well, and I think that that shows in your work because you have such a particular hand. Like your engraving, I'm looking through engraving and I can see when you've done something because you have a certain style to what you've done. How did you kind of develop that?
Well, I have three rules that I teach my all my students. And the number one is learn ornamental art. You have to basically, especially engraving. Engraving is an ornamental art form where you spin your vise. So
Hmm.
it's the foundation of that is scroll work. So it's literally how to take a square or a triangle or any shape and how to like beautify it. How to basically ornamentally design it to make it look pretty. So I would say that everything that I learned in the beginning, I spent a lot of time with learning ornamental art, which is the foundation of that is scroll work. You have to learn how to draw scroll work and you have to learn how to just design it simply. It doesn't have to be super elaborate, but you just have to know where to place things and how to do that and to take something and just to make it look beautiful. And then once you get that down, you can spin it in any different way you want. So I would say I spent a lot of time learning ornamental art. And then once you kind of understand that, you can use any ingredient you want with it. And so for me, I think that, I'm a product of the 80s. And so I grew up, in skateboard culture where, all of this iconic skateboard art, and cartoons during that time and movies, the media. So I would say if you were to look at my work, so much of it is a product of like, okay, I learned how to do ornamental art, but yeah, I'm a product of the ease. And so it's just like basically molding those two elements together to make what I like. So I don't know. It's hard to know like how did you kind of develop your own style? Things just kind of fall into place. I think music and everything that you look at or you see, but ultimately I know a lot of people struggle with they're never sure what they want to engrave. They always get stuck with, well, what should I do? And I have the opposite problem, meaning like I have so many things that I want to do that there will never be enough time to be able to do them. So in one regard, it's like, yeah, I don't know, but I would say that, spent enough time with ornamental art to I built a foundation with that. And then I get to decorate, my house with whatever I want. And usually it's probably has something to do with my childhood.
That's really cool. What would you consider to be your most deeply expressive piece that you've done to this date?
Oh, I don't know. People ask me that, and it's so hard because everything that I've done in the past, it's going to be something that I'll do in the future. Because everything that I've done in the past, every time I finish a project, even though it was going to be my magnum opus, it was going to be this is the project that's going to put me on the map. Anytime I finish a project like that, I get very depressed, and I tend to not. I tend to be over it. I found that with especially big projects, you have expectations that you build for yourself that you can't fulfill. And it's really difficult because after you finish like a big project, like I'm almost finished with one right now, and I'm kind of like over it. I'm kind of depressed. It didn't really turn out the way I was dreaming it to be. And so I tend to like finish big projects and then I kind of just forget about them, to be honest with you. And so it's hard to explain, but there's always a certain letdown with projects that I've never been able to get over. And I found that it's it's the creative process and the vision, and it's the climbing up Mount Everest that gives me purpose. And then once I summit it and I reach the top, it's a letdown. And so I'm always just looking for new mountains to climb. I'm looking on the horizon. So I'm already thinking about like a new project.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but
Well,
there's
I
been
can
lots
tell
of
you
projects.
what my favorite piece of yours is. You have done some pretty impressive Rolexes.
Thank
How
you.
do you even approach a project like that? It sounds like from what I'm hearing from you that approaching it is easier than closing it out for you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and so and it's something that, I think that with the watches in the beginning it was just very simple like scroll work. They were not super elaborate like they got. And so I kind of had to learn the canvas because it's so odd. It's such
Yeah.
an odd canvas. It's not like a square box or something like that. So it became tricky to design, but once I had done enough of them, you should start getting you start to have more and more ideas about how to go about them. But in the beginning, they were very, very simple. I would say that my creative process is I wing it, meaning I have a very low resolution idea. Maybe I have a client. So right now I have a client. He said he wants dragons on the bracelet. Okay. So it's a very low resolution. And so I start with that. We can put the dragon on that. But outside of that, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Maybe I want to put like Japanese clouds behind the dragons, but how do I want to? So it's a process where usually things start out very low resolution, and then I just trust in my skill set to basically. Okay, so this is a quote that I really, really like, and I want to say it's Picasso, but I don't know who said it. But he says, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. So
Yeah.
I find that true with me. Like if I were to like try to design something for somebody, beforehand, I would just draw blanks. But if I actually took the piece and started putting like my, border lines on it, using my dividers to lay it out, and then, all of a sudden, then like the gears and cogs in my brain start turning where I'll come up with ideas. And usually, the deeper that I am into the project, the more ideas that I have. So it almost opens up a box of like, oh my God, just think, and by the end, it's like you have to just like pump the brakes. It's like stop because you have to finish this project. You can't just continue to like, you know, decorate it because you need to like get the check. You need to be done with it. So I would say that usually things are very low resolution, and as I'm working on it, I trust in my skill set to make it come together.
Yeah.
But I don't give people renderings. I don't do drawings for people. I don't use Procreate to do any of that to design beforehand. I feel like Procreate is a great tool, but it can be problematic because you can spend too much time on Procreate where that's not getting your project done. You're on Procreate. So to me, it's like I want to start cutting on a project like pronto.
Yeah.
Like, like start drawing on it and then start cutting on it like same day, hopefully before lunch.
That's amazing. That reminds me what you just kind of referenced. There's this phenomenal book that I will send you by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic. And she kind of toys with the idea that the definition or the origin of the word genius actually was by the Greeks, and it was a little man that lived in your walls. And the little man was named Genius. And whether or not you were lucky that day, potentially Genius would find you, but he would have to find you working. And if it didn't go well, it wasn't your fault, and your fragile artist ego could be okay, but it was the genius's fault. And if it went great, you also couldn't take as much credit for it because it was the genius.
Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah, it's such a strange phenomena. I don't know where creativity comes from. I don't know how it happens. I couldn't tell you. I mean, if I'm thinking about trying to be creative, like if like I'm in the shower in the morning trying to have like creative thoughts, my brain is like flatlined. There's like nothing. It's like like I could not do anything creative to save my life. But as soon as I, roll into the studio and start doing something, it doesn't matter if maybe it's sweeping the floor. Maybe it's just like responding to someone's emails or you know what I'm saying? Start the working process. This is what you do. And then through that, once I know if I start, it's like that's the hardest part about anything is just starting. I find that's people's biggest hurdle is like, they're nervous or they feel ill prepared. Like I get it, but it's like you just start. You just put your foot on the path and go out the door. And then you'll have an adventure. But if you're nervous to do that, then it's like, I just learned over time that if I just need to go in and start. It doesn't matter what it is. Just the simplest things, just like looking through my scope at the piece, and then just getting a pencil or whatever, just start. But outside of that, it's like I'm always impressed with people that do like full renderings, and they draw things out beforehand because I feel like I all of my good ideas come during the process. And engraving is such a lengthy thing. I'm doing a big knife right now, and so it's a big canvas. There's a lot you can do. So I just start with like, okay, I'm going to put, skull up here. He's going to be holding a dagger, but all of like, there's so much detail that's going to go into it, but I don't know what is going to go into it. But I know that I'll be, blessed with these ideas as I'm just working on it because
Yeah.
that's what always happens.
Well, and you
So
have the time, like in engraving, to change and pivot and add things. Was there a piece of advice that you received early on in your career that sticks with you now, even to this day?
I was told don't engrave the inside of rings, and I never did. I don't, a good piece of advice. I don't know. What? I don't know off the top of my head. You got me on that one. Maybe I'll think of something as we keep talking.
Well, how about this? I'll rephrase the question. Is there something that was influential in the way that you received training that you now implement or have changed in the way that you train? Because you're also a teacher.
I will say this. I had a class I taught at GRS, and one of my students came up to me after class, and she had been in education. She was an educator herself. And she said, okay, Jeff, just so you know, great class. Like literally like, one of the better classes that I've taken, but I've written down a list of things that you should do with your classes. And it was a step by step, about what we're going to do during the day, um, through each Monday through Friday. And then she said, and then what you should do before every class is you should introduce yourself, you should talk about yourself, and then you should have everybody go around the room and introduce themselves and say something about themselves. And I remember like it made me so mad. Like I remember getting angry about it because I was like, you know, it's, your ego gets involved and who are you to tell me, how to teach my classes. But then I thought about it and I actually found that piece of paper years later and all those things she had written down. And one of the things that really stood out to me was introducing myself and then having everybody else go around the class and introduce themselves. That's probably one of the biggest things that did stick that I felt has helped me with my teaching is just making everybody that comes in feel comfortable to get their chance to say a few things. I think the introductions just kind of set the tone for the classes.
I think what you're ultimately now wanting to do is cultivate a sense of community. And I think you've done that in more ways than one, right? You've done it in your classes. I think you've done it online. I think your social media presence is incredibly impressive in how you've marketed yourself. And I think that that's another form of community where, when we get to know each other, and that's kind of a bit of the premise of this podcast is like, I follow and see all these amazing jewelers, but I want to talk to them. I don't just want to be another like number or thing that they scroll past. I want to get to know these people and learn from them.
Oh, you're smart. I tell you what, you're smart. That hasn't come naturally for me. It's come through teaching, which has been a great blessing. I mean, because I never thought I would teach. I never thought of myself as an educator. Like, I'm someone that likes to come into my studio, lock the door, draw the blinds, turn on the music, and basically block out the outside world. I think that I'm very introverted, highly neurotic. And so I tend to thrive, on my own. It's like I'm a loner by nature. I think good for you in recognizing that's important. And if it wasn't for social media, I'd still be a closet, you know, engraver. So thank God for Instagram. Saved me.
It's fun. And I definitely need to do that too. I need to, just go and sit and spend the hours, by myself and listening to music and just getting in the workflow. But now that I'm doing this full time and predominantly in my shop, I'm alone. And so to another capacity, this is kind of my social outlet. So
It's important. It's
yeah,
important.
yeah. You've talked about your teaching and how you've kind of now included students in your space and you've got like a little school set up. Do you want to talk about that?
I guess you could call it the J Park School of Engraving. I just call it J Park Studio. I've been here in this space for 3 years. When I first built the space out, I wasn't sure if I could fill the seats. It was one of those, it was a leap of faith. Although I knew that people were coming to my GRS classes and there was a demand for but you never know with doing it on your own.
Yeah.
So when I did it on my like the first class I had, I think I had 6 benches, and then that class sold out. And then the next class I had to put a few more benches in, and then that class. Anyways, I've had so many classes that have just filled up, and so I think I've gotten 14 benches in here at this point, which is too many to be honest with you. It was like 10's probably a big class, but I had 14 people in here last month, and so it was pretty wild.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, and I think that I try to be a hyper creative environment. I try to give people really, I feel like I'm in a good place here to really motivate you. If this is something that interests you and you want to do, it's like I can, because I have the experience in the game, meaning like that's just a full-time business for me. This is what I do. So if you come out here, I can tell you all I know about, this world that I occupy. And if you're creative, I tend to get a lot of tattoo artists come through here. Simply amazing. It like once they figure out how to use the tool, they just start, basically tattooing what engraving what they tattoo, directly on the metal. So it's always really cool to see. But yeah, I mean, we're in Mesa, Arizona, so 15 minute from Sky Harbor. The classes have been really, really fun. Like we're kind of tucked, it's not a huge space, and so the classes tend to be like, very once a conversation gets started, the whole class is participating in it. Like everybody's talking about whatever, because we're not spread out. Like if a GRS, I think you can't hear somebody if they're on the other side of their larger facility. So it's very intimate, which I think people appreciate. Ultimately, for me, it's been like the greatest thing ever because I never thought that like I would attract people and people's interest. I never thought that anybody else would look at like what I do and the love I have for engraving that other people would want in on that. So
Totally.
it's
Yeah,
it's
the
so cool.
camaraderie of it all, right? Just
It's
be in the room
such
where it happens.
such camaraderie. And so I'm just really quickly, I just want to show you like my favorite thing just really quickly because we're
Yeah.
talking about the school. So this is a door that I took out of my old place and I have everybody sign my door
Oh, fun.
that comes in here and the door is just filled up with.
All these signatures.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like who's who of the jewelry scene too, like I get a lot of people that come in here that I just really admire and they
Yeah,
want to come take a class from me and I'm like, "Really?" So it's been in that regard, it's just been like the funnest thing ever, which is interesting because I wouldn't have thought that. I
that's
would have
awesome.
thought it's like we talked about earlier, it's like my engraving and my pieces and to be honest with you, I do big pieces and I love them, but then I forget about them and they kind of just I fall by the wayside. But I come in here some days and I just look at that door. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's so and so, and this person. This person's been in here twice. This person's been in here 5 times. People that come in here multiple times, and for the most part, people have the nicest things to say. And it's just it's pretty amazing because I just never thought that I would be in a position to have influence over people.
Yeah, absolutely. Your work actually reaches a global art, a global audience, excuse me. How would you like your work to be remembered?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's cool that people say, especially large pieces, that piece is going to be around for a long time. It's not disposable. I tell people if I want to make my work look like something, I want it to look expensive. And
Yes.
so it's something that you're not going to probably like throw in the trash or be melted down for scrap. Once World War III hits or whatever, it's like hopefully my pieces won't go on this scrap oven, that people will hold on to those but I think that ultimately, I think it's a great way to become immortal is to make pieces that have your name on them that are going to be looked at and revered for hopefully a while,
Yeah,
hopefully hundreds of years, if not more. But I think that in itself is pretty cool, and but ultimately, I don't have any grand desires to be like, some famous jeweler or anything like that. I think that as long as I have like a small niche group of collectors that like to buy my work, that I'm perfectly content. I think that as long as I can do what I want, which is pretty much what I do, then I'd be happy,
yeah.
and so
That's so funny. I've had that same exact World War III thought too. I'm like, what do I make that doesn't end up in this?
yeah, I know. I'm just like, to me, I'm like, who knows? In 50 years, like, are those gonna get smelted down, or is mine? Who's gonna get? Who's like? I want my stuff to be so well made that someone can't replicate it. Right? If you were to take one of my watches and you were to take it to Cartier or Tiffany, I don't care who you took it to, they could not replicate what I did on it. And that's my ultimate like satisfaction or like what I hope to achieve is like like with so much jewelry nowadays it's like oh you could just you could scan it or make a CAD file or it's like you could replicate that item infinitely but you can't replicate my work. Maybe
No.
AI will be able to do it but I doubt it. It's like there's too many things that went into it.
Yeah, I don't think
So
so. I don't think so. And that hand cut, there's just a certain like edge to it. As soon as you pour your soul into something like that, that doesn't get replicated. I truly believe that we will not be replaced by AI, at least like the artisan jewelers, right?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
Can you identify a moment in your career that you're really proud of?
I would say this school is the biggest achievement by far. So it's not necessarily anything that I've done, any piece that I've engraved, although there's some like watches that I've done that I'm like, okay, that was pretty cool. I like that. But I don't feel like, even though when I was creating them, I felt like they were my magnum opus, I don't feel that same way once they're done. I
Hmm.
feel like they're kind of like, just like, ugh. You just tend to see like the imperfections and things, and you just are already looking to the future to do something in the future that will be cool. So I have a hard time with like, you know, finding achievement in certain things. I always feel like it's just the process. It's climbing up the mountain, even though it's painful and it's suffering on these big projects. It's just working on them that I find purpose. And then you think you're going to reach like some heavenly realm once you achieve it, and it's just never there. It's like it's fleeting, you know. But with the school and with everybody that's come out, like I showed you my door. Not going to show you a piece I'm working on right now. It's like, I don't feel the same way about it. But with the school, I feel like that's my greatest achievement thus far. Actual pieces, I just feel like you have a lot of hope for pieces. And then with, I just know that, I wish I could be that person that's like, when I post something, that I could say, like, I'm so excited. I'm so happy with this piece. Like, I just can't be more proud of it. You'll never hear me say those things. And usually I don't say anything about it. There's literally, and it's probably poor quality video or photographs. I rarely get my pieces, photographed by professional photographers. It's just because I'm usually fairly deflated after I finish projects. Like I said, I kind of know that now because to a degree, it's like, oh, I'm so excited for this project. And then I kind of at least know now that it's gonna, the tire's gonna deflate and I'll be let down. But the good thing is I always have a project on the horizon that's fresh and new. And so I
Yeah.
can immediately, and it's usually if I finish a project in Monday morning, I'm started on a new project Monday afternoon. There's no,
So you're just an adrenaline junkie for the creative process.
that's what it is 100%. It's like, finding the creative zone. Like if you were a surfer, those moments where you're out there surfing, if you find that barrel for 3 or 4 seconds and you ride in that barrel, you lose yourself and you find yourself all at once. They call it the zone, right? You find the zone. If you can find the zone in the creative process, it's like a magical realm. And so once you inhabit that, it's like being on drugs. It's like the closest thing that I can compare it to. It's like all of a sudden you have these magical powers, like, like you have your Harry Potter wand and you're doing spells on a piece, and it's addictive,
Yeah.
but it's fleeting. It goes away. And then you're always trying to, it's like you're chasing that again. Like you're constantly trying to like find that zone again.
So what is the next project for you? Or what is rather your dream project? Could be anything.
I think I would like to make some elaborate pieces of jewelry that incorporate some of my own stone faceting and intaglio carving into gold where it's fabricated. You look at kind of what Jason does to a high, some of that. And I'm not like the world's best fabricator, but I can fabricate stuff that I want to make and, just encrusted with gems and jewels and stuff. And something that really highlights my engraving though.
Yeah.
So I have some ideas for things. I've fiddled with certain things. The problem is finding clients for that because I definitely had a shoe in with doing watches for a good 8 years. Knives are like I have a lot of collectors that collect my knives, although knives are like they're cool in their own right. But I think building one-off pieces of jewelry, if I had the materials right now that gold's like unaffordable. Basically, it's like
His
thank
over
you.
free throw.
$3,000 an ounce. Great. If I need to buy some gold, it's like I'll have to mortgage my house or something. Hopefully I'll be able to do some things that I'm happy with in the future. I have some ideas, but they cost money, and with jewelry, it's like I usually don't have buyers to like commission stuff like that up front. I'll sell my pieces once they've been made, but I don't have, and so it's expensive. So if I want to do what I want to do, then it's going to require larger and larger commitments of materials. So, but hopefully I get to do some stuff that I think would be super fun in the future, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm pretty content. Like I say, I'm just trying to I don't know. There's a part of me that just wants to try to focus on my kids because they're little. And sometimes when you get absorbed with your work, it can become all consuming.
It's all about balance. It is. You know, it's so important to find that. And if someone wants to learn from you and come out to your school and take some of your classes, how do they find you and where do they go?
J.Park1 Instagram. I have a website, it's jpark.com. There's probably contact information on there somewhere. I had it built and I like everything. I didn't love it, so I just pretended like it doesn't exist. I'm a crazy person. Like I said, if I was good at business, I'd be rich. But I just like to find the zone, the creative zone, and that requires just working on projects. Unfortunately, that's where, like you said, I'm addicted to that, to finding that rush of the creative, because it's almost like tapping into a power it's like it's there, but how do I get back into it? But Instagram is probably the easiest way. That's where I communicate with almost all of my students. Occasionally, people will email me. You can do that, jeffpark360 at Gmail. Um, but usually, Instagram, if you have Instagram, it's probably the easiest, best way to contact me, just to DM me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I will work up to that. I have a ways to go before I'm qualified to take one of your classes.
I
I
don't
look
think
forward to that
so.
day, though.
The beginners classes are a lot of fun. No, like I say, yeah, I mean, I get what you're coming from, but you don't have to have any experience to come out here for a beginner's class. I mean, they are just nobody has a clue. So I think you could probably come to an advanced class. If you're working with Brady,
I am.
in so many regards, Brady's a better engraver than I am. I mean, he does really high level kind of sculpting work that's better than what I do.
He
I
does
tend to do
the
more bigger, like elaborate engraving projects, but it's not that Brady's no slouch.
No, not at all. He does beautiful chasing and reprise and then matches that with engraving and and he hand fabricates everything beautifully and
Yeah,
perfectly. It's a master class and I'm really lucky to just know him and get to pick his brain. So,
for sure, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. And just any last little words of advice or tips or, for me starting out, being brand new to this side of the industry, do you have any advice for me?
Follow your passion. If the bench is where your interests lie, then just delve into it head first. Submerge yourself. Just you know what I'm saying? Like I think that ultimately it's a love affair. So treat it like you would if you just fell in love with somebody, like you're just all consumed with that person. Treat it the same way. Just anytime you can be at the bench, work anything that sparks your interest, whether it be stone setting or fabricating or engraving, do it. And just the more that you do and the better equipped that you get and the more experience that you gain, the funner it becomes. Just FYI. And so but it's like anything else though too. It's filled with difficulty. It's filled with frustration and like all of those things come along with it. But at the same time, it's the hard that makes it great.
That was a great answer. Do you have anyone on the tip of your tongue or in the front of your mind as to who you would tap for me to interview next?
Oh, well, you've done Jason. Matt Tuggle. I was just gonna say, why have you done Brady? And Brady would be a great one to interview.
Yeah.
The Tuggles, Dalen Hargrave, Master Gem Carver, Gary Rowe. I'll think of like 20 people as soon as like I put the phone down. But those are a few.
Brady is slotted. We've
Okay,
got him on the
good.
calendar.
I'm okay. Good. I'm glad. Like I say, I mean, it's always guys like Brady that I think that because as far as his skill set goes, there's probably nobody. He's super high level, but he's such a nice guy, that he doesn't like cut your head
Yeah,
off with his skill set, like some people want to do. Some
he's
people are
so
aggressive
humble.
with
He's
their.
very
He's
humble.
very humble. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no,
and then
that one's coming. I'm working on that one. It's because I go up to Brady's studio so often, and I'm trying to see what would be better if him and I, yeah, I've only ever used this platform where someone else is far away, and I'm playing with the idea of an in-person interview, and so I'm trying to figure out
that would be fun.
that with equipment and all of those things. So that's to come. We'll see.
Saf Brooks, he'd be another one that comes to mind. Now everybody's gonna see this. They're gonna like hate me because I didn't, you know, give him a shout out. But
You
I'm just
reserve
drawing a
the
blank.
right to message me later, and I
Okay, I
add him to
might.
the list.
Yeah, I might. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Jeff, this has been so fun. Thank you for your time and thank you for just putting your work out into the world. I have so much fun just literally like doom scrolling on your page. I don't know what else to call it. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's fascinating to look at and try to think about how you even pulled that off. I know you look at it with a much like finer comb and you critique it harder than, but when we see it, it's playful, it's fun, and it's fine work. So thank you for putting it out into the world.
Well, thank you for looking. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
This has been so fun. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for
All
your
right.
time.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Bye bye.
All right, that wraps up my time with Jeff Parke. Jeff, thank you again so much for coming on the podcast. This was a ton of fun, and I really hope to make it out to your school at some point. And just look forward to seeing what else you're gonna do. You're such a creative artist. This was a joy. This was an absolute joy and an honor. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.